Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be taking you through our experience at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios in Orlando. Before we go on into the park, I wanted to say a special thank you to everyone who helped support the channel. It is greatly appreciated. If anyone else is interested in supporting our channel, you can check out the link to our Patreon page in the description below. Now, we had frequent fear passes that got us in all through September, as well as some backstage tour passes. So they told us to go ahead and pick it up at the VIP entrance, which is where people typically line up for the RIP tours. We did do that in previous years. That tour is great because it helped us avoid some of these long lines that we ended up waiting in with just the frequent fear pass. But speaking of long lines, I'm going to tell you in the next video or so how to avoid some of the long entrance lines. But this is kind of giving you an idea. Before we started going through the scare zones, it was still a little bit light out, so we were able to hit a couple of the haunted houses and grab dinner before actually doing some walkthrough videos for you. They don't actually let you film inside the haunted houses here in Orlando, and I will say that the two that we just saw there weren't my favorites. The first one was Descendants of Destruction. It was sort of a dystopian New York City subway situation. And the next one was a 1950s house of the future that is like overrun by mutant bugs. It was kind of crazy, but let's go ahead and take a look at the scare zones. As I said, the first one here is The Horrors of Halloween, led by the Pumpkin Lord as he greets guests walking into the first scare zone of the night. Let's hear what he has to say.
I extend my grabbing vines and grow Halloween.
Very creepy. He makes a great focal point for the entrance of the scare zone and just for Halloween Horror Nights in general.
Look at all my loyal followers. Yes, yes. Grow and spread Halloween, my minions.
So let's go ahead and read the description of the scare zone. It says, the Pumpkin Lord, the spirit of Halloween, has taken over this year's event, summoning hordes of fiendish creatures. Terror has taken root. So really, this is just kind of an entrance, like I said, to the whole event, and it kind of gives you a preview of all of the different scare zones that we're going to see and some of the creatures and scare actors that we will see as they come through. It was incredibly dark by the time we started filming, so it's a little bit hard to see, unfortunately. I love this little pumpkin archway. So I remember a couple of years ago they did a scare zone where you walked through the trees were all lined with all these jack-o'-lanterns beaming down from you from all the trees. It was just amazing. I do think it loses just a little bit of that effect when they're all just grouped together in this big archway here. It's a little bit unfortunate. And as you walk through, you get to see some of those pedestals are kind of lined with some of the things that you're going to see in the future scare zones. Like there's one that's a witch-oriented, and you've got kind of a cauldron on there. One had some candy because there's a sweet revenge scare zone. We're going to see all of these in the later videos, so stay tuned for that. But look, there you can see that girl with the orange tutu and a bat walking around trying to frighten people. I think that one there was from the witch zone. And they had a scarecrow zone. These aren't the proper names for them, but we'll get that corrected as we take a look at those zones in some later videos. Today, we're just going to be taking a look at this entrance video. Here's that cauldron we were just talking about. And then we're going to take a look at the tribute store as well. So they did have, in all, I think, 5 scare zones. They had 2 shows, 10 haunted houses. Of course, the tribute store we walk through every year, and then, of course, lots of Halloween merchandise and food to eat. It's a pretty fun event. Like I said, we do try and go every year. This is the first time we just tried doing it without any sort of front-of-the-line passes, and we did it over 4 days. We just hit a couple of haunted houses each day, and we were usually out by 10:30, so you can actually start getting into the park. They say officially at 6:30, but they really start letting you in around 6. And there's some tricks you can do to maybe get yourself toward the front of the line there. Again, I'm going to share some of that perhaps in a future video. But it's really those first hour, 2 hours that you can hit a bunch of haunted houses with the short lines. And the great thing about Universal now is with the app, you can always see what the current wait times are just by looking at your phone. It's fantastic. So once you made it through that first scare zone here, you can see they've got some special Halloween-themed games. I don't recall, it's been a while since we had our annual pass at Universal, if they have these games out all the time or if it was just for Halloween Horror Nights. I kind of suspect they were. Again, they were Halloween-themed. And you also have these Halloween-themed sort of pop-up restaurants, and all the fun food has like Halloween names and whatnot. But as you could see from that little clip at the beginning, we actually ended up eating at one of the restaurants, just a typical burger place they had, primarily because we could sit down inside in the air conditioning because it was so hot and so muggy and so rainy. It was awful. And the burgers, which we'd never had before there, turned out to be pretty fantastic. We actually ended up eating there a couple of other nights as well. So here we are going into the tribute store. There was actually a line the whole night for this, so it was a little surprising. It was a little hard to get the entrance way there on film, just because we were in the middle of this big giant line. But if you look closely on the ground, you can see there's like an imitation track, as if you're going through a dark ride. I thought that was an interesting concept. So we are going to take a look at the different areas of the tribute store. This first area is very just sort of like, I don't even know what it is, like small town Halloween or more like retro, because when you just come into the tribute store, we came through a different zone that is called Sweet Revenge. It's kind of like a small town Halloween festival going on out there. It's very nostalgic and reminiscent of good old small town USA Halloween. It's just a lot of fun. So that's what this first room is here. And honestly, I felt like the rooms are a little bit disjointed. It seems like in years past, they've been a little bit more cohesive, but I really wasn't feeling that this year. Obviously, this first room felt very much like the scare zone outside. However, when you think about it, like they're also trying to make this as if it were a dark ride, so it should really be like cheesy scares you'd see in a generic carnival sort of dark ride, and not just rehashing what was outside. But I will say the atmosphere still was fantastic. I just think if they were going to do all these separate little areas, they shouldn't have tried to tie them together in a theme of like a dark ride. I do like this sort of barn facade. That was really amazing. Then as we go through into the next room, we're entering into a cemetery, and there's quite a line of people because the aisles are pretty narrow. But what was pretty cool about this room, of course, they have all the cemetery props there, the tombstones and whatnot, and then of course the dramatic lighting chain. It really makes for a good display, and if you kind of look closely at that shelf in the back, it was in the shape of a big coffin. That was kind of fun. Of course, there's lots of products in here. In years past, we've taken a much closer look, shelf by shelf, of all the merchandise they have. But honestly, a lot of the same merchandise you can get out in a lot of the different stores as well. It's just you get the really neat theming here. Some of the stores out there, by the way, have really interesting scarecrow displays. I think they have a scarecrow scavenger hunt as well. So you try and find all the 10 different scarecrows or whatever. We did that in a year previous. Kind of wanted to make a film about it because it was just a fun event, and the different scarecrow displays were pretty amazing. But I never got around to it. So definitely check that out if you are looking for something to do that's a little bit more than just the usual Halloween Horror Nights fare. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of people here. So in general, the parks didn't seem overly crowded, but it was opening weekend when we went. So it did seem significantly busier. Now, we started out over the weekend and then stayed a couple of extra days as well. And in terms of the haunted house lines, it seemed like they were longer on the slower weekdays as opposed to the weekend. Maybe they just had more staff and could shuffle people in faster over the weekend. Look at these guys. I've actually made one of those myself for a Mausoleum display. They're kind of easy to do, but I think the ones here that they've just done were moving a little too fast. It looked a little cheesy, but maybe that's kind of the dark ride theme as well. Of course, there is that photo opportunity here. You could stand yourself in a coffin, but we did not want to wait in line for that. And as you can see there on the floor, that dark ride track is taking us now through the Mausoleum, I guess. So I told you so, Dallas. I don't know what this is all about. Clearly, these people with the pictures are probably like people who helped out with the event, designed the haunted houses. I don't know. If you know who these people are, I'm sure they are relevant somehow. Let me know in the comments below. So as we move into the next room, we have some, I really love that cauldron display with the foot that is just sort of spinning. If there was one thing in here that I'm going to steal for a future display of mine, it's that. All right, as we look around the room, again, they put a lot of detail in these. I like this room too, that it's got those windows there with the sort of motion displays. We're going to take a closer look at them here in a moment, but I do think they were a little bright for the room. It kind of ruins the illusion, which surprises me a bit because they're usually pretty good about the displays and making them look pretty neat. Got a little case of some Halloween goodies there, and then of course a little glance at some of the merchandise, but of course I'm here for the decorations. I love getting ideas of things that I can use in my own home. I think we're coming upon those windows here. They're supposed to look like stained glass windows. They don't always move, but if you watch closely for long enough, they will. But see how bright they are, which kind of draws you out of the illusion because this whole place is so dim and dark. That just makes it seem like there is a bright sunny day right outside. And over there you can see one where the witch is crossing through the windows. It's a little hard to film the bright display screens, but obviously that's kind of like a haunted woods there, kind of creepy. But again, too bright. And then we're coming into the last room, the Haunted Hollow Hills. Again, more sort of small town festival. They've got a little bit of merchandise here in the room, but primarily we are making our way toward the exit. As you can see in the background, they've got little displays of merchandise that kind of look like they're all part of houses and windows, like you're in the street and you're just passing through and there's all this Halloween small town decorations around you. So you can get lost in these stores. They're kind of fun, but again, why do we have the dark ride track on the floor? I know I'm really harping on that, but it does kind of irk me because this is kind of a cool concept, just like being outside. So I don't know why they didn't just make it like we're walking through a town. You started out maybe on the outskirts with the barn and the fields, and then you cut through a cemetery, and then you make it to the town square. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but why did they need that dark ride concept? So overall, I think this tribute store might earn a grade of like a B- in my opinion. There have been some really good ones in the past. I mean, I remember a Frankenstein one with a big giant Frankenstein. It was just amazing, and all the laboratory setups. This just kind of feels cheesy. I don't know why. Maybe it's because a lot of the, the vintagey Halloween nostalgic look is so easy to come by these days. I mean, if you go in any stores, you just see all that merchandise everywhere on the shelf. It's just so easy to emulate. I kind of hold Universal to a higher standard. So a little disappointed in the tribute store this year, but they did have some great haunted houses, which we will talk about a little bit in some future videos as well. I'm probably going to make this a trilogy, so you're going to want to stay tuned for the rest of those as we check out the rest of the scare zones and so forth. All right, I'm really running out of things to say about this room. I probably shouldn't have spent quite so much time filming it, but here you can kind of see a little bit more of the town. I do like that they've got the banners and everything strung across the walkway here, making it look like, a town square. That is pretty neat. But we are going to take our leave here, so farewell, everyone. Like I said, we will be back with a couple more videos showing the rest of what Universal has to offer this year, but take a look at the channel as well if you want to see more product reviews, DIYs, store walkthroughs, and more. Till next time, thanks for watching, take care, happy haunting.